think.
See, like the little cartoon characters in Scalia's. Welcome to Civil Discourse Now. I'm Mark Small.
And I'm Paul Ogden.
We're coming to you live on July 7th, 2012 from Indianapolis, Indiana. Paul, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Mark. How are you doing?
Doing okay. We're here to discuss today. The first segment is going to be what's going on. We've been doing that for the last couple of segments. Generally, we discuss several items of recent interest in the news and society, and then the rest of the show today we're going to be discussing the Supreme Court's decision in National Federation of Independent Business and Others versus Sebelius, or in other words, the Obamacare decision, the decision on health care.
And Mark, before we get into that, I want to tell our viewers what the show is about. The show is Civil Discourse Now. It's where we attempt to discuss civilly issues related to local government, national government, state government, as well as things that happen on the international level as well.
And social items too.
Social items as well. I kind of misspoke there.
Yeah,
it's not the first time.
Yeah, we talked about sports. We did talk about.
We did have a great show on baseball once.
And we have our live audience here today. Our fan base. First thing to address, big item this week was the.
Well, you want to introduce our guest first.
That's probably a good idea.
That would be good.
To my left, not politically but physically, is Adam Lenkowski, Indianapolis attorney.
He's a criminal attorney.
I'm a criminal defense attorney.
Yeah, that's just really cute. And our frequent guest is Jeff Cox, also an Indianapolis attorney. And Jeff, okay, Adam, what's your contact information?
I work for the law firm of Roberts and Bishop, which is in downtown Indianapolis.
And Jeff, what's your contact info?
I work for my own law firm, J.R. Cox Law, which is in Indianapolis.
Okay.
I understand Jeff has a book, maybe.
Yes, I do have a book coming out next year. It's going to be called Rising Sun, Falling Skies, the disastrous Java Sea campaign of World War II. It's going to be about the Allied troops who were trapped in the Far East just after Pearl Harbor and their battle against the Japanese. It should be coming out next summer to 2013.
Well, then what are we talking about it for today? It's not going to be coming out the next year. Hey.
You can confirm there'll be pictures in the book.
There will be pictures in the book. Yes, there will be. And there'll be maps too.
Big maps.
Okay, can you fill them in and stuff? And are they interactive?
Well, I'll make it just for you on a website, Mark. So you can color it.
Will you have like an interactive game from it, so you can like redo the Java Sea?
They already have that, actually.
Oh, gosh.
That's called Battle Stations Pacific. It's on Xbox 360.
Is it specific to that?
More and more.
Okay. Okay. In terms of our issues this week, current events,
Of which we have lots of issues.
Oh, yeah, I know that.
Andy Griffith died.
Yeah, the actor who played Andy Taylor on the Andy Griffith Show. Andy Griffith died this week of a heart attack. He was also on Matlock. He's like 86 years old. That was a big series. I mean, he never won an Emmy for that, or even a nomination for that series. Don Knotts got 5 of them.
That's interesting. He didn't win. It's surprising he didn't win anything. It was such a show. A good show, a very well-made show. Mayberry had all kinds of characters that people still talk about today, and has been on the air since 40-something years, I believe. It is a show, probably the first show that I can recall watching when I was growing up, and I just enjoyed it a great deal.
Well, there's a definite division in the show and the quality of the show when it went from black and white to color. Right. Because the first 5 years, Don Knotts played Barney Fife. The show was always shot in black and white. Then when Barney Fife moved to Raleigh to work for the state police in
Raleigh. He was an investigator, I believe.
I think it varied. He was a fingerprint person in the lab at one point, and something else. When he moved, things, I read that Andy Griffith had wanted to end the series about then. He was winding it down. Knotts thought that he was going to end the series, and so Knotts signed up for some movie deals, like The Incredible Mr. Limpet and The Ghost and Mr. Chicken, one of his all-time classics. Yeah. But they didn't end the series, and so they brought on a series of characters like Howard Sprague, the guy Warren, who replaced Barney Fife but really couldn't.
Deputy Sheriff, Deputy Sheriff.
Yeah, and then the guy that had the Fix-It shop.
Emmett.
Yeah, Emmett. I mean, because
the characters went downhill.
Yeah, I think Floyd had died of a massive coronary.
Floyd, will notice in all but the very first year, he's always sitting down because he had a stroke and he couldn't stand up.
Well, and the other things about the Andy Griffith Show, if you ever notice, no one actually works. I mean, Gomer and Goober talk about working, and they'll start to fill up a gas tank, but they never actually do anything. And there's never any crime in Mayberry, so they're never really busting anybody.
And they have the town drunk there.
Well, the town drunk, but that's not really an employment position.
No, it's not. But one episode I found very interesting. There was a couple that had a small baby, and they left the baby on the doorsteps of some house. And I recall, and they eventually came back for the baby, and they said, "Oh, we're sorry, we shouldn't have done it," and everything. And basically, the punishment was, "You shouldn't have done that. Don't do it again." And they abandoned their child. And today that would be a felony, but in Mayberry it was not a felony. It was a shaming offense. But
it'd be a felony, plus they'd have Department of Child Services putting them through programs that they'd have to finish after the child having been found in need of services, and then they'd be looking at a termination of parental rights, and all of that would be out of the hands of Andy Taylor, who really was the king of the town.
Well, Andy Taylor, one thing you will notice in some of the episodes, he will arrest the person, he will bring them back, then he will pull out of his desk the Justice of the Peace sign and put it in front of him, then actually try the person. I think that's very, very efficient.
Yeah. Another thing about Mayberry is there were no African Americans in the Barney years who had speaking parts, and only in the first season and a half were there any African Americans in the South, in a southern town, because it's supposed to be in North Carolina. And they were only like in background things where they were part of a crowd or something, and that's kind of a.
Well, it's the same way with Friends, the show Friends. There were no black people in New York City.
There are actually speaking parts that.
Yeah, not major parts, but.
Not major parts, but I mean it's more realistic.
It's the same with Seinfeld.
Well.
We're getting off track though.
Yeah.
Do we have other topics, Mark?
I was just gonna say I watched it on the few occasions I stayed home from school. That was one of the series that was on that, and Bewitched. There's next issue is that there's one opening at the Supreme Court, and there's going to be one at the Court of Appeals. The position on the Supreme Court. They have had 22 applicants for it, 16 of whom are female. We are one of only 2 courts in the United States, 2 state Supreme Courts, that does not have a female member.
I think we should ask our guests, should the selection for the Supreme Court, should we look to put a woman on there, or should we pick the best qualified?
I think we should ask our guests something. All you and I did was talk about Andy Griffith's show.
Yeah, I didn't watch the Andy Griffith Show, although I know all the references to it. But
wow, didn't watch.
Now I did. I watched the reruns of Andy Griffith when I was growing up, and I have to say, I think most people will not find this a big surprise, but my favorite character was a town drunkard who would let himself in and out of his jail cell.
Yes, that's what you aspire to be.
That was, yes.
Yes. So, but Supreme Court, Adam. We got 22 people up, 16 women. Should gender be a consideration on the...
No, absolutely not. It should be the best qualified person.
Okay. Well, let's hear from Jeff if he's able to speak on this. He seems reluctant to speak on this.
I'm not reluctant to speak on anything.
All right.
Gender should really not be a consideration. It should be the best person. for the job, but we usually, this is not a reference to the Indiana Supreme Court, but in, a lot of appointments, we don't get the best person for the job. We get the political insider or, someone
Governor's
who
counsel.
knows. Well, the thing is, Mark Massa on the Supreme Court is a pretty good choice. I mean, he was a good prosecutor. He knows what he's doing. I don't have any issue with the Mark Massa appointment to the Supreme Court. But there are a lot of, you've had other strange appointments to courts across, not just in Indiana, but across the country, and you can say that they're not the best person for the job, or they were picked on something other than their legal qualifications.
I think I think we should get the best male, white male for the job. I mean, that's what it's boiled down to the last couple of selections they've made. I think the court should reflect the demographics of the community. Yeah, you should go for the quality of the person in terms of being a good judge or good justice, but also if I were an African American, I would be sitting there saying, well, what about my interests being represented on the court or in society or being reflected in the institutions that govern my society and determine what the laws are?
And this is why Mark's wrong. It's not the purpose of the court to enact laws. It's the purpose to interpret the laws, and it shouldn't matter skin color, and it shouldn't matter your gender in interpreting the law.
Are you saying that we should have a quota on the court?
No, I'm just saying having zero is like saying, well, we've only had 2 women. I'm sorry, we've had 2 African Americans on the court in the entire history of the Indiana Supreme Court, and we've had 1 woman. Now, that woman also is an African American. So that's kind of like, that's the limit of the diversity that our court has had, Jeff. I don't think that I'm really being tremendously radical by saying we should have more diversity on the court.
But the alternative is a quota. You think basically there should be a quota. You're supposed to have a black individual on the court. You're supposed to have a woman on the court, at least one. And
we only have 5 people on the court.
I know.
It's like after all these 175 years or whatever, shouldn't we have?
Well, let's clarify. We haven't had 175 years of women being attorneys. We haven't had 175 years of blacks being attorneys.
Oh, so we cut it off.
Except, a few here and there. But you got to look at the pool of people that were available. Now we have a lot more African Americans becoming attorneys, a lot more women becoming attorneys. In fact, the majority of women are attorneys.
Yeah, but I guess my point is then there's an argument to be made for we have to catch up. That's another legal principle of catch up, is catch up for all the time where we haven't had women represented, or African Americans, or Latinos. There are many groups in this society that haven't had representation.
Oh, so you're going a step further. You think that now, in order to make up for all those years we didn't have women or blacks on the Supreme Court, we should have only women and blacks on the Supreme Court. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying you don't cut your analysis off to, since they've been eligible. Okay, before that time doesn't count. Well, no, we've had this history in the state. We're almost up to our bicentennial for the state of Indiana, and we're up to the end of this segment, and we'll be right back.